Aloha mai kako, you are watching Hawaii Political Reporter.
I am Dracula. A moment ago, I stumbled upon a most amazing phenomenon. Something so incredible, I mistrust my own judgment. Look.
Dracula. The very mention of the name brings to mind things so evil.
It's important.
So fantastic, so degrading. You wonder if it isn't all a dream, a nightmare.
Rats. 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 Thousands. Millions of them.
But no, this is no dream. This is Dracula, the original terrifying story of a maniac and a man who lived after death, lived on human blood, took the form of a vampire bat, and lured innocent girls to a fate truly worse than death.
Van Helsing, now that you have learned what you have learned, it would be well for you to return to your own country.
I prefer to remain and protect those whom you would destroy.
Through the medical monopoly, when they can go to these homeopathic people and get these remedies at very low cost. So the first plank of the AMA was we will never allow any homeopathic physician to become a member of the AMA, and they never have. So, but the AMA was still in a minority. So around the turn of the century, John D. Rockefeller realized there were great potentialities of profit in the medical industry, and so he took over the medical profession. Now you say, how could anybody take over the medical profession? Well, first you have to have a lot of money, and second you have a lot of power. Well, he had both, and he did. So he revamped the entire medical system of treatment of the people of the United States, which had been homeopathic. He switched it over to allopathic medicine, which is a different type of practice, originating in Germany. And the great attraction of allopathic medicine is it relies on radical surgery. I mean, if you can't cure it, cut it off. And the heavy use of drugs, because when you're having your limbs cut off, you need a lot of drugs because it's very disturbing. And lengthy hospital stays, none of which are features of homeopathic medicine. It's entirely the reverse. So by taking over the medical industry in 1910, through studies which he made through the Carnegie Foundation, John D. Rockefeller emerged as the kingpin of the medical monopoly in the United States. And he now presided over an allopathic system of medicine controlled through every legislature by accreditation of hospitals, control of physicians, control of medications, and which is essentially what we have today. So from 1910, when this change was effected, right to the present day, the cost of health care has multiplied astronomically in the United States to the point where it is no longer available to most American citizens. So how did they counteract this? When they got us to the point where the average working man could not afford hospital care or the allopathic system of treatment, they set up an insurance industry, medical insurance. And through this, they were able to spread out the costs among everybody. And health insurance today is simply another tax on the American people. In fact, it functions through the Social Security system as a tax on the recipients of Social Security. They say, well, now that you've reached your senior citizen stank, you have Social Security coming in, so then they jerk back a good portion of it as Medicare costs, which they raise every year. And so eventually, probably, Social Security and Medicare will be equal, so you'll get a check every month, which will be 000. They say, well, here's your Social Security check, but we've deducted your Medicare costs, and so now you get zero.
And it's funneled into the Rockefeller-style monopoly, whoever is involved in it.
Oh, all of the money from the health industry goes into the medical monopoly and the drug trust. Interestingly enough, the Rockefellers control every major drug company in the world, and now when I say control, I mean directly. They have, among the directors and officials of each of the 18 largest drug companies in the world, they have men from Chase Manhattan Bank, from the Exxon oil company, and so forth. So they're right there. The names, I have all the names in my book, Murder by Injection. And with this kind of control and the monopoly, they have been jacking up the health costs on the American people monthly, not yearly, but monthly.
I think all of this is easy enough to understand and easy enough to follow from A to B to C to see how a Rockefeller family and John D. Rockefeller, with an almost incalculable fortune back at the turn of the century, was able to parlay that fortune into a tax-exempt foundation, let's not forget, that was able to invest its resources in philanthropic concerns, quote unquote, that even helped to parlay that fortune even further so that Rockefeller's heirs are even more substantially wealthy. Although not if you read Forbes' wealthiest men in the world list, but do you really trust that list? But suffice it to say, I think it is easy enough to understand how the Rockefeller Foundation has been used to further Rockefeller cartel interests, and we've seen that in previous editions of this podcast. For example, The Truth About the Gene Revolution, where we looked at how the Green Revolution and then the Gene Revolution, both Rockefeller-funded and supported endeavors, have gone on to serve Rockefeller cartel interests in the monopolization of the food supply. Well, in the precise same way, we can document and look at how the monopolization of healthcare services in the United States has again furthered the Rockefeller cartel interests, this time in the Rockefeller drug empire and the pharmaceutical industry that is related to it. But I think we also have to understand that there is something deeper behind this, an agenda that goes beyond the mere profit motive, because it is something of a truism that once we get into the rarefied part of the economic stratosphere that the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and the other 0.0001% of the elite reside in, where they not only have access to unlimited amounts of wealth, but access to the processes by which that wealth is created and or destroyed, i.e. the banks themselves that create the money out of thin air, I think we understand that profit isn't in and of itself a motivating driving factor for the David Rockefellers and others of the world. There has to be something more fundamental at base. And as I've made the point many, many times on this podcast and in the interviews that I do, I think that at the end of the day, this is not about money. This is about power. And money can be parlayed and used as a type of currency to buy and purchase power, but ultimately it is the power itself that is the important factor in this equation. And this power is being wielded for a specific purpose. The driving, motivating ideology of these cartel families, and one that has motivated them demonstrably for generations, which is to say, eugenics and depopulation.
Remember the 5th of November. That these wars of aggression, this police state oppression, hinges on one single thing: our cooperation. It's not the tyrant at the top of the pyramid who has the final say, like most are conditioned to believe. The real question is not who issued the immoral order. The real question is, why did you obey it? Did you obey because you saw a shiny badge, a uniform, or an official-looking seal? Did you think that those symbols of authority remove your responsibility to discern? Or is it because those around you complied quietly and you didn't want to stand out? Did you think that since you were told that you were not in charge, it was someone else's responsibility to ask these questions? The truth of the matter is that no one really stands above you. In 300 years, we are all dust and bones, and the queen and the pawn both end up in the same box. There are no bonus points in the afterlife for being a good little slave. There is no retroactive compensation for accepting a life of indentured servitude. And there is no honor in bowing down to these criminals who claim to be your rulers. Until you realize that, until humanity gets up off its knees and looks them in the eye and says, "No, I will not obey. No, I will not comply." Until you take your power back without asking for permission, there will be no justice, and there will be no peace.
Hi, this is Hawaii Political Reporter. I'm Crazy Kim. We're here with Dick. He's part of the GrassRoot. What is this forum? Tell me about it, Dick.
It's GrassRoot Institute of Hawaii, and perhaps I should tell you why it's GrassRoot Institute of Hawaii, because the knee-jerk reaction of everyone is to say grassroots, and we named it very, very. As a matter of fact, there's both a rhyme and a reason for GrassRoot, and the simple thing is the rhyme is GrassRoot Institute rhymes better than Grassroots Institute, but actually the main reason is that the Declaration of Independence, which was the foundation for our country, honors the individual. It over and over and over again, the importance of the individual is emphasized in the Declaration of Independence, and then following that, the Constitution, which is based on the Declaration of Independence. So we wanted, honestly, to remind our staff every day, over and over again, that we need to honor the individual. The individual is the whole basis for our country. The individual, the Declaration of Independence giving the purpose of the nation is the individual is paramount. There are certain unalienable rights of the individual, and the individuals get together and they form government. Government does not form the individual. The government is formed by the individuals, and they delegate to government certain responsibilities, which means that they can take back those responsibilities if it's mishandled. So that GrassRoot is, and by the way, interestingly enough, every time, people just automatically say grassroots, and then once I explain that to them, they never make the same mistake again.
That's very informative. I remember when H. Ross Perot ran, he indicated that we needed some bottom-up thinking instead of top-down thinking. And I'm definitely feeling like I'm driven in the ground like a tent stake every day, like the government's just hammering me day after day after day. Is this something like what you guys are talking to us about, to take control, for us to get some of the bottom-up thinking going?
That's exactly right. And you're in bed with the last Rasmussen poll I saw about the strength and power of government. 80% of our population is opposed to the size that government has gotten. They're upset with the expenses, how much money is being spent. And it's interesting because if you look at a chart of government expenses, federal government expenses, from the time of the start of the revolution all the way through, there's a bump for the Civil War. There's, but it's pretty flat until about 75 years ago. And all of a sudden it starts going up. And right now it's going up like a cliff. It's just straight up. And the thing to notice about that is it doesn't make any difference at all what political party is in control. It's immaterial. It just keeps going up. So we've got we've got a problem between the political class and the people. And the political class should not have any clout. It ought to be we the people. But the problem that we've got is that the average citizen is a very busy person. Right. Very busy. And so when these college professors and all these newspaper people, they present talking about political matters, they must be, I've never counted them, but they must be 29 terms that they use. And they'll talk about ultra-conservative or ultra-liberal and, and all of this stuff. And the average citizen, a conscientious citizen, very sincerely will look at that situation and say, I don't have time to learn all that. And the fact is, the amazing fact is that all 29 or however number of these terms there are, it's all meaningless except to these damn professors and all of these, and the news people, and just something as simple as conservative. If you ask 5 people on the street what conservative means, you get 5 different answers. So what we're saying is that if you look at the Constitution of the United States, it gives only 2 directions for government. Either the government opens up the way to individuals to reach for liberty, or the government pushes people down, down, down to more intrusive, bigger, more demanding government. And to substantiate that, Ronald Reagan, in his great address, A Time for Choosing, about 3 minutes into that address, he says, now I'm paraphrasing, but forget the left and forget the right. Those are meaningless terms. What we need to look at is whether it's taking us up towards individual liberty or down towards statism and the bigger and more intrusive state. And what I like to say is just in simple terms, the bigger the government gets, the smaller you get.
Well, that nothing could be more truthful than that, I would say. Well, Dick, you said 75 years ago this spending spree began. I would say 50, 60 years ago, about 60 years ago now. So 15 years into that, Eisenhower said we needed to be very aware of the military-industrial machine. And then I saw some interesting statistics that indicated that when Reagan knocked out the Cold War issue, we had a huge drop in defense spending, which meant that our economy got better. And now that we have the war on terror, and I'm not exactly sure who the terrorist is, but a lot of times I think it's me. And so the military-industrial giant now has a new enemy. Do you see this as part of the problem?
Yes, I do. It's, first of all, the president, when he declared the war on terror, you can't have a big enterprise like this without having a purpose. And if you're going to have a purpose, then you've got to have, if you've got an unlimited war on terror, and you remember that the state, the best friend of a government is to have a war, because that gives the government more and more power. And so what we've got is we don't know. If we won the war on terror, we wouldn't know it. I mean, we don't have any standards set for this, and so it's a very dangerous thing. It's just very dangerous. And as a matter of fact, I think that that President Obama he's got a really right idea. We need to end it. We can't have it's just an opening for the state to go bananas, so to speak.
Well, going bananas or coconuts. I never thought of that. I guess I suppose terrorists could be pretty elusive, since I'm not sure who the terrorists are a lot of times. That gives them a pretty big target to hit.
And it will change. It will change to try to keep the emergency going. That's a way that you can unite the people and so forth and so on. So and there's another side to it, and that is that the whole idea of terrorism is frightening, and people are easily frightened, and so I agree with you. I think we're having difficulty deciding who the terrorist is, but I can assure you that unless we the people start asking very serious questions and challenging these people, we're going to get bigger and bigger government, and that's going to make you and me and all the rest of us smaller and smaller. The only ones that are going to get bigger are the people that are running the machine, the government.
So would that be the Dow 30 industrial people like Lockheed Martin and Halliburton and Bell Textron and United Technologies and all these people that are producing all of this technology to fight this war on terror? Do you think that they're truly involved, or do you think this is there a specific lobby direction? Interesting that this is a very united effort.
Well, they're all in bed with one another.
That could be a good movie.
Eisenhower was right, and it's a lot of these business people who are in their operations. They're working hand in hand with government, and if you look at and some of them, or maybe a great many of them, are smart enough to know that they're doing things that really are not good. And I don't know what they're doing about that. The ones that feel like there's some things wrong, but the fact is, if one of them stood up tomorrow and said, "Okay, well, I've had an epiphany, and I'm now against working with the government and so forth," the next day he wouldn't be president anymore.
Right.
I mean, he'd be gone. And so there's a certain amount of all of that rubbing each other's back and so forth that it's again up to us, the people of the United States, to identify that and to start getting upset about it and to demand performance of these people.
You know, that's an interesting thought. In a way, if all of us are somehow the terrorists, then we go buy stock in, say, one of these Dow 30 industrial companies that is in turn lobbying our government to create more war machine at the expense of the taxpayer and can only be paid if we print more money. This is a pretty vicious cycle. What do you think about that? I mean, wow, that's pretty enlightening. I never thought of it in that light.
Well, it's funny that you'd pick that up because I'm searching for the name. There's a Washington, D.C. think tank that the name of it just escapes me, but they own stock in all the major companies in the United States. And we're just finishing a whole series of, these companies. I didn't even know it until recently, but their annual meetings are clustered in this time of year. It's like April, May, and June for some reason. They have their annual meetings. This organization goes to the annual meetings and challenges the president of the companies about why they're in bed with the government on certain issues and why they are taking the positions that they are. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization, and boy, are there occasions where the chief executives are left fumbling pretty badly. And they're doing it. Sometimes for tax advantage, but always doing it so that they're cooperating with the government. Because if you would allow me, that leads me to special interests, and we hear that term all the time. And if you want to identify a special interest, the biggest special interest in all of the United States is the government. The government, the people that are in government, have a special interest in government. They are the biggest special interest in the country. And instead of, you'll have them fog that up. And they'll talk about, well, so-and-so is a special interest sort of thing. That special interest doesn't have 10% of the power or the money that the government has.
Yeah, but the government has our money, and since they can't tax any more out of us, they're just printing some more at the hands of Uncle Ben. And but I got to say one thing about Bernanke is he's honest. He said right in the beginning, if we can't keep this economy going any other way, we're going to throw $100 bills out of helicopters. I'm looking for the helicopters. However, all the helicopters around here are looking for a different kind of GrassRoot than you guys are representing, that's for sure. This is a very interesting, you're really helping me understand things, but yeah, the government is your customer. Gee, I guess bullets and Band-Aids is the answer, huh? And now with Obamacare, they got us on both ends.
Yes, the challenge is to find a way to get the public one at a time to start asking the proper questions. For instance, if the city council of Hawaii County is some city councilman is making a plea in a speech, and he talks about, well, we need this, the city council needs to pass this law, I'm advocating this law, and so forth, then the question must come from the audience, from the people, where somebody gets up and says, you know, sir, doesn't this make government bigger and more powerful? And the Declaration of Independence only gave two choices. We're either opening the way for people to reach for liberty and reach for autonomy and accountability, or the people are being forced down. And that was in the Declaration of Independence. Where do you stand on that with this bill? And then that causes the audience and it causes the city councilman to stop and say, oh, I'm building the government. And I'm suppressing the people. So we just have to have it. By the way, it doesn't take many before things start changing. If people start asking this question, things are going to change. Because you see, elected officials are not leaders. They are followers. And if the American people, if the people of Hawaii County start standing up and start insisting to ask this question, is it up or is it down? Is it making me bigger or is it making me smaller? Society is going to slowly change. When society changes, politics changes automatically. Because all of these elected officials are either leaving office, not being reelected, or running as fast as they can to get in front of the crowd.
You know, that's something that's very interesting. There's statistical information that indicates that the politician that spends the most money gets elected. It makes it pretty hard for the politician that represents the people, and the people are broke, to have the most money so they can get elected. Therefore, the politician that accepts the big money from the big company always has the big money. Therefore, they're going to do what the big company, the big money, whether it's on the big end, Lockheed Martin or Bell Textron. At the local level, maybe it's Matson or Helco or the labor union. How do we combat that?
Well, I think that the people inherently understand, and if they're being bought off, I think there's a chance that they will rebel and to fight that. You know, we had an occasion in Hawaii County. We had that happen with about 4 or 5 mayors ago, where we had this guy that came out of nowhere, and he didn't have any, what was his name? I've not forgotten it.
Before Harry Kim.
Yes, before Harry Kim. I can't remember.
I don't know, my producer remember?
I know who he's talking about, but I don't know his name.
Okay.
I can't think of his name. But anyway, it was the people.
Somebody write in and tell us who that is.
It was a total surprise. I mean, everybody is
it was
because
Jesse Ventura.
I can't remember. Gosh,
I'll tell you what,
because he came out of nowhere.
It's been a great interview. Thank you very much.
The Federal Reserve Act. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express.
You try to hide and destroy our freedom. You seek agenda. We know you anti-American. American. You come forward American Constitution. 1913, corrupt in the system. Devalue dollar, hyperinflation. The Federal Reserve, controlled by Lucifer. He can see you lying.